that eminent domain is the power of the government to take private property, and usually it means to move private property into the commons for the public good, for public use. But what has happened over the last few years is that eminent domain has been used to take private property from one private property landowner or property owner and move it into some other private property owner. And that's what is going to happen if the Iowa Utility Board grants Energy Transfer Partners or Dakota Access Pipeline the power of eminent domain. It gives that power to that private corporation. That is a bad use of that power, to give it to a private corporation to move it into its own. I think we need to take back the conversation about what eminent domain is all about. I think we need to have a conversation about what government is for, which is to serve as the trustee of the commonwealth and the common health for present and future generations. Government is not to just grow the economy and make private property owners richer. It is to protect the things that we share. And that's the definition of Iowans, isn't it? We take care of the things we share. We will not be taking care of the things we share if we allow a private corporation that's a master limited partnership to take the power of eminent domain from government and use it to take private property from people in Iowa and use it to create permanent damage for future generations. That is a bad use of eminent domain. We need to take back the conversation about it.
The Iowa legislature has said that if a public utility is granted a certificate of necessity, that means that if there's a public purpose here that justifies eminent domain. The question is this pipeline a public benefit? Is it a convenience and necessity? And we say no.
In fact, it's a public necessity to deny it.
As Carolyn said, over the past several years, this idea of eminent domain has been stretched way too far, that even if a company gets tax increment financing, which Professor Swinson knows something about, they get the power of eminent domain. So a private company that wants to build an apartment building or a factory, if they get tax increment financing from the local government, they can take the property that they want to take to build that facility. And that's wrong.
Just a clarification about this specific pipeline proposal. Eminent domain is not a reality until the IUB approves it. We've heard from landowners that there are surveyors for the pipeline company coming on landowners' land saying that this is a done deal and that they just need to start agreeing to an easement. So I would encourage all the landowners to not believe that because it's not true, and to not go into those agreements for the easements because this is not a done deal. It's far from a done deal. The application has not been submitted and the Iowa Utilities Board has not approved this yet. This Bakken oil pipeline is slated to connect to an existing pipeline in Illinois and then slated to go to the Gulf of Mexico to refineries. The pipeline company will say that this is all domestically produced and used for domestic consumption, but we know that just going to refineries in the Gulf Coast doesn't mean it's going to be consumed here. It is destined for export. So we know that it's not going to help energy independence for what that's worth. Also, the rail issue is a big concern. They're saying that it's going to ease because there's an issue with some farm groups who aren't necessarily opposing this pipeline because they see the pipeline as a benefit, that if there's a pipeline built, it will eliminate some of the oil that's on rail cars and will free up rail cars for grain transport. But we don't have any specific information. We believe that building a pipeline is just going to increase production, and they're still going to haul. We know that they're still going to haul on rail. We just don't believe that they're going to decrease oil transit on rail as a result of it.
My understanding is that they have some other pipelines connected to Patoka, Illinois, which is where it's going to be piped to. But my understanding from the material that I've read is that it will be transported in multiple ways, possibly even down barges or other through the Mississippi River. We don't know. They've just talked about the other pipelines.
Now, the pipeline companies actually said two different things. When they initially announced the project and put out the maps, the oil was going to go to Potosi, Illinois, and then a pipeline that Energy Transfer Partners already owns down to the Gulf of Mexico. And they said maybe some might go by rail to points on the East Coast, but most of it was going to go to the Gulf. At the public meeting I went to in Sigourney, the pipeline company representative there said, well, it'll go to the terminal in Potosi and then go, wherever, but it's going to stay in this country. So they've said two different things. So who do you believe?
Next question. Because Energy Transfer Partners is a master limited partnership, it pays no federal or state taxes as a corporation.
This pipeline is only going to need very few people working on the pipeline, so it's just a few dozen jobs are involved with it. The major taxes that are going to be collected will be the property taxes on the lines. That's the long-term taxes. The short-term taxes on the construction impacts, that'll be a spurt, then it'll go away. Otherwise, it's going to be those taxes. Those taxes are reasonably substantial because it's a lot of land area that they're covering with this pipeline.
My name's Angie Carter, and I'm here today with the Women Food and Agriculture Network. I'm also a proud member of Iowa CCI and a member of the Iowa State University Sustainable Ag Student Association. And I'm here to talk today about what it means to be a good neighbor, because as Andrea said, the landowners who are here are worried about their land, but they're also worried about what's going to be happening downstream, because we know what happens upstream impacts all of you. So we're worried about what this means for our neighbors. We know already that Energy Transfer Partners is already a bad neighbor. And as a fifth-generation Iowan, I know a little bit about neighboring, and I know a little bit about our values in Iowa. And I know that Energy Transfer Partners, or any oil company that comes to our state and tries to get us to agree that this is necessary or convenient, is a bad neighbor. Because already the oil companies have been bad neighbors to those communities, as Irv mentioned, around the Bakken oil fields and other places in our country where their pipelines have leaked and spilled, and where they've brought escalated violence to the landscape and increased pressure to those communities. They have been bad neighbors to the shrimp farmers, whose livelihood has depended for generations upon the harvesting from the Gulf and is now jeopardized after the BP spill. They have been bad neighbors whenever their oil, their radioactive waste, and their saltwater spill. They are bad neighbors when the risks associated with the oil extraction has led to North Dakota having the highest rate of worker deaths in the United States. They are bad neighbors when Indigenous women are trafficked to and disappear in their oil field boomtowns. They are bad neighbors when their pipelines spill and pollute water and contaminate soil up to 30 feet deep. They are bad neighbors when farmers find oil spills the size of 7 football fields bubbling up from the ground, as one North Dakota farmer did during his wheat harvest last fall. And those of you who've gone to these ETP IUB meetings, you've heard that they're going to survey the land by air to try to see if there are leaks and spills. Obviously, that doesn't work. They are bad neighbors because they make their profit from exploiting land and people, even as we know that our oil economy is accelerating climate change and putting our livelihoods and our futures at risk. This proposed pipeline would cut across 18 of our counties, but it impacts all of our major watersheds, endangering public health and our land for our entire state. Our state lacks the needed legislation that would hold the company financially accountable for full damages. They may claim that they will be good neighbors and they'll be financially responsible, but if we don't even have laws on our books to hold them responsible, we're just trusting an oil company, which history is full of examples of why that is a bad idea. Already before it's even built, the pipeline has burdened Iowans. Many of you are here today rather than spending pre-holiday time with your family, doing things with your kids today, putting up Christmas lights or whatever, because you're concerned about this pipeline. Some of you have even already hired legal counsel, and you're doing this because there's a pipeline proposed across our state. You wouldn't be spending your time this way if they hadn't proposed this project. Proponents of the pipeline call it progress, but they're not good neighbors either. We know better. We know that progress looks like something much different than an oil pipeline. The transfer of toxic crude oil poses serious risk to us and comes at too great a cost. This pipeline is not necessary nor convenient. It's only convenient and necessary for the oil company, and that's their problem, right? If they need to move their oil, they'll have to find another way. If they are worried about their profits, they should have chosen to, and their shareholders should have invested in something other than an oil company, because we know that's not our future. There's one answer here, and that's all of us to say no to this pipeline, to call upon our county supervisors, our state legislators, and the governor, let them know what we think about this pipeline. We don't want this oil transported through Iowa. But further, we can't remain silent and just say it has to stop here at our borders. We need to step up, as Andrea has said, because this is a climate justice issue. It's a national and it's a global issue. We can't continue to put our future at risk. So I've been encouraged by hearing about how some of the tar sand oil companies have been pressured by all of this negative Keystone attention, and they've decided not to renew their leases in the Alberta tar sands. That's encouraging. That shows how public pressure put on these companies can make them pull out and stop. And it would be an amazing thing if we could get that to happen and we could be part of that movement here. Thank you.